Hey, what's up, folks? Michael Anthony here today. Anyway, I'm down in the woods. It's brutally hot out, and I thought I'd come down in the woods to shoot this video because it's much cooler, right? So I'm at my property in Ohio here, and this is a long-awaited video that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been putting it off. So this is the 1-year update of my saddle hunting setup. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience over the past year, and it didn't take long to get in a good rhythm of using the saddle, especially because I've been climbing trees for years and hanging multiple stand setups every year in different states. So the proficiency of climbing and using lineman's ropes and things like that was not new to me. What was new was getting in a good rhythm with the saddle, and that only took really just a few sits, and I felt really good about it. Got much quicker, got more efficient. What has changed, though, is my actual setup. As I went up and down the tree more, as I got into different situations hunting, and also got input from viewers and from friends and stuff like that, I started to evolve and update my setup in different ways. So I've taken some things away, I've added some new things, I've increased the safety factor even more, and I'll talk a little more about why in this video. But safety, redundancy is paramount. I preach it not only for saddle hunting, but for any sort of hunting activity, especially going up and down stands, hanging stands, things like that. Doesn't matter if it's a climber, a hang-on, a ladder stand, whatever. So one thing that's been nice is a lot of viewers have talked about how they maintain safety and use redundancy and things like that. And that's nice to hear, because I think of all the views of the saddle hunting videos I've had over the past year, there's only really been one negative comment I could remember, and that was somebody basically saying what I'm doing is overkill and I should just stay on the ground in a hunting blind. Obviously that guy's super confident in his setup. He probably doesn't even use a lineman's rope, right? He just climbs that tree like a monkey and gets up there and just hunts his balls off. But anyway, hey, if somebody has a problem with my safety redundancy setup, then tough shit. Anyway, I will be going up the tree today. So I'm down on this ridge here. I call it the hump, and we got this nice tree here I'm going to use, and I'm probably not going to use all my sticks, but I do use climbing sticks now instead of those steps. I'll show you that to you and kind of explain why I switched it up. But I could use 3 sticks. They're lone wolf climbing sticks, and I can get about 18 feet up. So I typically use 3. I do have 4 of them that I could use, but I found that I really don't usually need the 4th. I can get in that sweet spot 18-20 feet with 3, and if I'm dealing with a tree that has branches and I could use the branches as a step, that's even better. I can get higher. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to do it. I'll probably just use maybe 2 sticks just for the purpose of the video. There's no reason for me to do the whole thing, but you know, it's good to get out and practice before the season with a saddle, especially if you're new to it, even if you've been doing it for a while, just to get out there and brush the dust off your equipment, double check your equipment, make sure everything looks good, make sure you don't need to replace or adjust anything, and just do a couple, you know, setups, right? That way when the season starts, you feel, you know, you're in the rhythm again, right? So I equate it to like training in jiu-jitsu, which I train in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I'll tell you what, when I take a month off or a few months because of an injury or whatever, it's sometimes hard to get back in the swing of things, but after a few training sessions, that muscle memory is there, feeling good, and it all comes back, right? So you don't want to be fumbling around on opening day, although opening day would probably be better than during the rut. But hey, I always think practice makes perfect. It's that's a proven fact. So get out and practice, especially if you're new to saddle hunting. I say the same thing with climber stands. I got a brand new Summit Viper climbing stand that I just got last year. I've only used it once, and it's awesome, but I got to get accustomed to it because my old climber, it was like over 20 years old, and I had a rhythm down with that thing, and I love that thing. But I finally upgraded to something. So I finally upgraded, but I'm gonna have to get out and practice with that too before the season, just to make sure I'm proficient with that actual stand. So enough chatting, let's get to it. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about the gear before I gear up and start going up the tree. I just wanted to point out a few things. One thing that I haven't figured out completely is the way in which I like to take my gear into the woods. Sometimes I use a backpack. I have a couple different backpacks I've used. Sometimes I put all my gear in the backpack, strap my sticks to it, my platform, and then I just hike in and I gear up right at the tree. That's one way I've done it. Another way I've done it is gearing up at the truck and just carrying everything in on me, essentially, with also carrying a fanny pack. It has my, my other hunting accessories like my release and things like that. But that works fine too. Another way I've done it, a third way, is I'll hike in halfway with the book bag, gear up about the halfway point, stash the book bag, and then go the rest of the way with my gear on. So I haven't found a way that I really prefer. The book bag is a little bit heavy with all the gear, but it's still not as bad as carrying like a big climber stand or doing like a mobile setup. So I'm curious what you guys like to do, which ways you prefer. I'm still trying to figure out which way I like. A lot of times, these bugs are all over you. There's just bugs everywhere. It's so hot out. Anyway, a lot of times the way in which I carry my gear into the woods depends a lot on where I'm hunting. Is it public land or private land? Am I dealing with steep terrain? Am I dealing with a long hike in? Also, am I familiar with the area? How familiar am I with the area? Could have a bearing on how I'm going to go in, right? Especially if it's in the dark. So there's a lot of factors that kind of play into how I do it. And maybe I'll just keep doing it that way, where I switch it up based on the area I'm hunting. I don't know. I'm always curious to hear how other people are doing it. I saw Cruiser just came out with a new bag, the Escape Pack or something like that. I might check into that. I don't know. Using my book bag doesn't seem that much different. So I don't know. I'll check it out. But anyway, let me know how you guys do. Okay, one of the first things I added were knee pads. I think knee pads are a must. From a comfort standpoint, especially if you're going to be doing a long sit up there, I love to have the knee pads. You're not grinding your knees against the trunk of the tree, and it's very comfortable. I haven't had an issue with that. Even if I'm wearing my gear going in, I could still carry the knee pads. I don't necessarily have to put them on at the truck and walk all the way in with them on my knees. Some guys will use like a book bag or a fanny pack against the tree and rest their knees against that. That works too. I haven't tried that, but I really like the knee pads. So definitely check them out if you're looking for a little more of a comfort improvement. Okay, another thing I changed up was how I get up in the tree. I'm using these Lone Wolf climbing sticks that I had. They're so much better than these. So my very first video, if you guys remember, my very first video was the first time I ever used a saddle. Like, I took the camera in with me, mounted it to my head, which was kind of fun to do it that way, because you guys got to see exactly what somebody new to the saddle hunt is going through, what they're having to deal with, how they're going up the tree, how they're thinking, and stuff like that. So I used these strap-on steps, and the reason I used them is because about 20 years ago I had something similar that Ameristep made, and I loved them. They were great. But I quickly got rid of these. After that very first hunt, that first video, I stopped using these to climb the tree. Number one, the steps aren't that big. And number two, you got to rely on these locking cam buckles. If you watch some of my earlier videos, I had a failure on my saddle platform where it failed and the platform went down. I didn't have redundancy on the platform. I don't know why. It was the one thing I didn't have redundancy with, safety redundancy, and it failed. But these buckles, they may seem heavy duty, but I'll tell you what, they could fail, and they did fail. I used them. I've been using these things for over 20 years and never had a failure, but it happened last year. So with that said, it's not a complete waste, because I just use these as my gear holders, right? So I put 3 steps on one strap, and I got like 8 of these, but I put 3 on a strap. I use it to hold my bow. I use it to hold my bow, hold a book bag, hold a fanny pack, hold whatever gear I need to hold. This fucking fly won't get out of my face. So I use these to hold my gear. I got 3 on one. They're easy to stow away in my bag on my saddle, and I just pull them out, I wrap them around. I got some tape around them because they're like that polished aluminum, but they're nice and quiet and they hold gear really well. So I use 3 sticks. The platform, I have an Amsteel trucker's hitch mod I got from Custom Amsteel Products. Plus I'm still using that same locking cam buckle that failed. I'm not using the one that failed, but Cruiser sent me 2 free ones, and I still use that and the Amsteel trucker's hitch rope mod, which works really well. And if you know anything about that Amsteel, it's tough as nails. So I got redundancy on the platform, and then the rest of my saddle setup is pretty similar. I use a retractable hoist rope for my bow. It keeps things nice and secure and tight, so the rope isn't getting caught up as I'm climbing up. And I'll kind of go over the rest of the stuff as I go up. But other than that, not too much else has changed other than, you know, creating more comfort, more safety, and more efficiency in my setup. So let's get to climbing. All right, guys, I got my saddle set up on, got my knee pads on. This is how I carry my platform, my sticks. So the platform I just hang from a carabiner. I got a little piece of rope here that I tied to the platform. That way I could just reach back, unhook that, strap it on. My sticks, same way. I just hang them from these carabiners here. I don't know if you can see that. So I got these carabiners. I could put 2 sticks on each side if needed, but I only use 3 sticks. So I usually have 2 on one side and 1 on the other. It's easy to access them right. They could be a little loud if they're clanging together, so I've been meaning to maybe tape these up. I just haven't done it yet, but that would help keep the noise down so they're not clanging together. But if you just take your time when you're going up the tree, you shouldn't be making too much noise anyway, right? I know it's exciting to get in there and get up, but you don't want to make too much noise either. So I'm just going to do 2 sticks for this. I'm going to put the GoPro on my head so you get 2 different angles. I'll probably adjust that camera so you can at least see me going up a little ways. But let's get to climbing. So the first stick, I just take it off the carabiner here. Nice and easy. Okay. So these have 3 steps on one stick, which is nice. So I got that set nice, right? It's nice and tight. And then this is my Amsteel daisy chain. So this is nice because it helps you throw it around the tree with that little bit of weight on the ball. So you can come around. And then I just try to pick, you know, the tightest one that I can, right? Should be able to get that one on. So that's nice and tight. Just tie this up out of the way. Heard something down in the woods. Just kind of tuck that out of the way. Now this is solid. This is nice and solid now. And what we have here is good safety redundancy. And just as a reminder, if you guys haven't watched one of my older videos, the funny thing is how keen I am about safety redundancy. But when I first got into saddle hunting, I wasn't using redundancy on my platform. It just never occurred to me for some reason, and I have no idea why. But what happened was my platform, this buckle failed. This pin, which isn't held on by much at all, actually slipped out when I stepped on the platform. Platform went down. Luckily, I was secured to the tree, but I got a pretty good jolt, and that's when I was like, why ain't I using the same redundancy I'm using for everything else? And I wasn't doing it with the sticks either. I was more concerned about my tether, my lineman's ropes, my bridge. I had redundancy with all those, but I didn't have redundancy with the sticks or the platform. So now I have that for all, and that was simple, right? The daisy chain, super strong. I forget what the weight rating is on this Amsteel stuff, but it's phenomenal. All right, so the next order of business is my lineman ropes, which I keep tucked away in my pouch here. So I got my first one here. I'll get around. Okay. Now, one other thing I'm going to talk about here, I use a lineman's rope and a lineman's belt, and I'm going to talk about why and how I use that. One of the toughest things with using a lineman's rope, if you don't have a tender or some sort of ascension device like the Ropeman 1, then one of the problems is doing one-handed operation, right? You got to use two hands usually, and that can be problematic if you're trying to climb the tree and you got a lot going on. Well, I learned a tip here that is super easy to make this one-handed operation. Obviously, loosening it up, you could do one-hand operation, no problem. But tightening this up is the challenge. So all you have to do is you take your tag end from the lineman's rope, you pass it through your carabiner, okay? And then with weight on, obviously you're gonna have weight on the rope, you're gonna come up and watch it slide. And there you go. Now, obviously, the longer this loop is, a little more of a reach you're going to have. So the shorter this is, the better. But this is fine for me, right? I can do one-handed operation, and then I'm good to go. That's pretty nice, right? So that's what I do. I have my lineman's rope. I use it like that. I haven't gotten into any of the ascension devices like the Ropeman 1. I know a lot of guys that use those and have those. I just haven't felt the need to get one yet. I might get one in the future, especially if I start rappelling out of the trees, which I'm interested in doing. I just haven't gotten into that at this point. But as far as my redundancy goes, this is my lineman's belt, and I love this thing. This thing's actually pretty old. I should probably replace it. This year. I've been using this for probably, I don't know, it's been a long time, maybe 20 years. So this is definitely due to be replaced. But this thing's great. It's a little bulky because it's not a rope, but it doesn't weigh that much. And let me just talk a little bit about this belt and why I like it so much. So I get this hooked up, right? Now I got two lineman's devices, and now I got a lineman's rope and a lineman's belt. There's multiple reasons I do this. Number one, like I've said 100 times, safety redundancy. If there's a failure on either one of these, I still have another one attached to the tree. The other reason I use it is because not all trees are perfect like this one. You could see up there's some branches. When you get up to a branch, or you're in a tree that has a lot of branches, they can be great because maybe you got good cover. You could use those branches as steps. But if you only have one lineman's rope, you're going to have to essentially detach from the tree, or you're going to have to pull out your tether and then remove the lineman's rope, and it's just not going to be very efficient. So when you have two of them, you have the security of being safe because you have the redundancy. But when you get up to a branch, it's simple. You remove one, you go up and around the branch while you're still attached with the other one. And then once you get the other one attached above the branch, you simply remove the second one and go up and around the branch. So you're always connected to the tree. It's simple. The thing I like about this belt is it is one-hand operation. See? And I can also loosen it the same way. See? Might not be as smooth as a Ropeman 1 or something like that, but hey, it works fine for me. I've been doing it for years, and so it's easy for me to operate this with one hand. And then when I climb, I just grab both and I go up the tree. Okay, so that's what I got. Now I also use, when I get up to where I'm going to set the platform, I'll show you how I use this lineman's rope as a secondary bridge. Okay, so let's get to climbing here. Keep climbing. See, pretty simple. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I need my next stick. So I'm going to grab my stick. Same thing. Get my daisy chain out, whip it around. Now, what I do with these tag ends, being this is a daisy chain, you can turn this into a makeshift trucker's hitch. So this is a little loose, you could see that, right? It'd be kind of hard to get to that next level. So what I do is, I put that on there, I use this tag end, I come up through one of the loops, okay, then I tighten it like that, then I come up here, come around, and I tighten that up. Okay, so now that's nice and tight. And then you could just tie this off. Just do a couple overhand knots here. Like that. Then this, of course, I'll just kind of tie off here. Like that. So now that's super secure, and even though that daisy chain wasn't very tight when I got it on the loop, I was able to tighten it up with essentially a trucker's hitch style knot, and then just secured it with a couple overhand knots that tag in. All right, so we're nice and set. Got our redundancy. I'm going to continue up. Next one's going to be the platform. I'm just doing 2 on this one. Okay. All right. Next thing is to grab my platform, unhook it. All right, so with the platform, you see this has this loop spliced into it already. So you get your loop that goes on the button there. Come around. Okay, and the way this works is you come up and around, and then you take this through the loop over here. Okay, so it allows you to pull it really nice and tight. So you get through the loop, and then you pull it nice and tight, but you want to make sure you lift this up first so you can set it nice and tight. Okay, you come up under, like that. You get that underneath there, and then you just kind of wrap it around like this. Okay, and then you set it. All right, so that's tight. And before I tie this loop off here, which I usually tie around there just to get the tag end out of the way and also make sure it doesn't slide out or anything, I also use this locking cam buckle, right? So I get that on there. come around. Gotta loosen that a little. Okay. So I get that on there, and then I just secure it nice and tight. Okay. Okay guys, so the camera died, the GoPro died, and I continued going, talking and all that, and I didn't realize it was dead, but luckily I checked. And so I didn't get too much further along. So let me just explain where I'm at and what I did. So I got the platform secured. After I got that green strap around, right, I took the Amsteel rope and just tied that up around everything, made it nice and tidy. So that's good to go. I got safety redundancy on the platform now. That Amsteel is super strong. And then I have that green buckle around. So I got 2 points of contact for the platform. So we're good to go there. Now, before I stepped up onto the platform, what you missed when the battery died was I put on my one tether, connected to it, still got my lineman's belts on, my belt and rope, stepped up on the platform, and then I was just starting to put up my second tether here. Okay, so this is what I do. This is how I do it. I mean, at this point, I'm basically saddle hunting, right? But what you want to do is take off your lineman's ropes and your belts. So, so I got this. Let me just make this a little tighter. Okay. So we're connected here. The first thing I'm going to do is disconnect the lineman's belt, because I won't be using this during the hunt. And I just stow this away in my bag. Okay. Put that in my pouch there. And then I will temporarily just connect this second tether to the same bridge. Right. Now I'm not going to hunt like that, but I'm just doing that to get this out of the way. The second thing I do is I disconnect my lineman's rope. What I like to do is I actually take this, my lineman's rope, hook it back onto my carabiner, then I come up and I connect it in there. Now I have 2 tethers. So the lower tether, you want this rope closer to the tree. The higher tether is the rope I used for my lineman's rope. And so now you got, we're saddle hunting at this point. We got safety redundancy here, safety redundancy here. Everything is doubled up. And it's just as smooth and as easy, right, to move around. Make sure you lock that down. So the next thing we do is we pull out our gear holder, which are these steps that I previously used on the very first saddle video, which is kind of funny that I used them because they don't really seem safe at all. We simply come around, and then I got my gear holders, right? So I could have one here for range finder, got one for my bow, calls, one for a bag, book bag, or a fanny pack, right? So I got my gear holders. It works good. And then the next thing I do is, this is a really long tag end. So what I do is I just kind of come up and get this out of the way. Okay. But I also use these to get these tag ends. Like, these tag ends are pretty long. I don't want them just hanging there. So I come up under the steps like this. It's just to get them out of the way, right? And depending on the size of the tree, you may not always have really long tag ends, right? So now I'm good to go. So I'll put my bow on that one, maybe some calls or the rangefinder right here, book bag on this one. A lot of times I bring in a fanny pack. But we're saddle hunting, and we got lots of safety redundancy. It's definitely not overkill. And let me explain. I like to look at things this way. When I hunt out of a regular tree stand or a climber stand, there's always safety redundancy. And a lot of guys don't realize this. When you climb up in your stand, assuming you're using a lineman's rope, a harness, a lifeline, or something like that, when you get in your stand, number one, you're attached to the tree through your harness, your lifeline, whatever, your tree strap. Number two, you're seated in a stable, balanced position on the stand. That's your safety redundancy, right? If you were to take your harness off, you're not just going to fall out of the stand because you have balance and stability from the stand. And vice versa. If you're sitting in the stand with your harness connected to the tree and your stand fails and falls, you're going to be hanging from your harness. So you actually do have safety redundancy. And that's the way I looked at it from the very beginning. That's why I never considered just having a single point of contact in saddle hunting. It just did not make sense to me, because every other tree stand I've ever been in, I'm always connected to the tree and I'm sitting in a stable position. Now with saddle hunting, you're not in a balanced, stable position. You're relying solely on the saddle and the ropes holding you to the tree. If one of these things fails and you don't have any redundancy, you're going down. So that's just the way I looked at it. That's how I look at things. So if you could see the value in that, that's great. I hope you stay safe out there. If you don't, then no problem. I have a lot of friends and family who are getting into saddle hunting or been in it, and they don't use redundancy, and that's fine. I would never criticize or judge anyone. It's to each his own, right? This is just the way I do it. So I've had stands fail in the past. I had the platform fail last year. So I've been hunting a long time. I put up dozens of stands every year, so I probably do a little more than the average hunter does. And so I take the precautions, and it's not a big deal to have extra ropes and extra straps and things like that. It's really not. So we're good to go. We got our knee pads. I also have the backrest thing here, the back strap, whatever you want to call it. So I'll put that in. You just slip that on there like that. This takes off some of the stress from your back when you're leaning back, and you can adjust it. So I'm going to make a little adjustment here. Yeah. So now that makes it a little more comfortable, right? And again, you got to make a shot. Boom. I'd probably pull this one down a little, because this is, if I was actually hunting, I don't want that one quite as high. I actually dropped that down a little bit. See, it's nice and quiet. Got full mobility and versatility. That's one of the things I love about the saddle. It's great for public land hunts, even private land. Let's say you have, a half a dozen stands up on your private land, and, in the middle of the rut, you need to make a move. You could make that move and take your saddle out. You take your climber out, right? It's good to have all these different options, especially in the heat of the moment, because that rut doesn't last too long when you compare it to the whole season. You might just have a few days, a few weeks to really get it done, especially on a big old buck. And having options like the saddle, your climbers, your portables, your ladders, whatever other ways you're hunting, blinds on the ground, it's good to have all those options. So the saddle's great for versatility, also mobility. You can pretty much get a 360 shot all the way around. And having this 2 tethers is not a big deal, right? But all right, well, I think that's going to wrap up the video. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and you can probably see I've come a long way. I kind of got a system down the way I like to do things, and it works well for me. I always love to hear what other people do. Saddle hunting is kind of cool because you could really adjust it to your own style, the type of gear you use, the way you do it, the way you set up, the way you get up in the tree, the way you get out of the tree. So I'm always all ears to hear what other folks are up to and what they like to do. And I've taken some insight from other people. Some people have been hunting a long time in saddles, way before saddle hunting was even cool or well known. There was some guys who've told me some tips and techniques, and that I try to take what I can from others, and I hope people getting into saddle hunting could also take tips from me. So stay safe out there, guys. Season's coming up quick. Stay cool, because it's still hot, especially if you're over here in Ohio or PA or the Midwest. It's been brutally hot. So hoping to get some good hunting videos out this season. So we'll catch you later. Have a good one, guys.